Good day, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Dodge, and I am with Stock and Option Solutions, and my voice is a little froggy today, so please excuse. But today we're going to show you another fabulous Excel function known as COUNTIFS. And I'm actually just going to talk about COUNTIFS and my current favorite use of it. You'll probably find lots of other fabulous uses for it, but my current favorite way to use it I find really, really handy for forfeiture rates, eliminating total rows, some other things. So I just thought we'd go through one example of how you can use the fabulous function COUNTIFS. So at least in one system that I work with, there's a report. It's actually a forfeiture rate report, and it gives me a total row. No matter how I customize or modify the report, it gives me a total row. It gives me tranche by tranche by tranche by tranche, which is great, which is exactly what I want. That's the data I want. I don't want this total row. So I tried a couple of different ways to get rid of it until I stumbled on this method, which I now think is the best way I've come up with. You'll probably come up with something better. But it's to use COUNTIFS to figure out how many rows there are for that grant and then find the last one. And I'm going to show you a couple different little functions. We're going to do COUNTIFS to find the number of rows. So I'm going to just type count, if I can type, ifs, and I'm going to tell it to count how many numbers where it's the number that I'm on. So count AA where AA. Sounds silly, maybe a little counterintuitive. And it comes back and it says, I counted 4 1001s. And when I paste this function down, even if I paste it through 80,000 rows of data or 800,000 rows of data, it will still come up with the same number. And you can see for each of these grants, I have 4 rows. Now, that can be useful for other things, too. If you want to compare number of rows on one report, number of rows on another report when you're looking at tranche-level detail, or you want to count people in Japan because there's a securities law filing threshold, or there are other reasons to use COUNTIFS. You could use it for country or number of grants, etc. But I just wanted to find number of tranches. So one thing I will say, I had a recent experience with a very large data set when working on forfeiture rates. When I used this function to identify the number of rows, it took a very long time to process in Excel. I was sort of at the boundaries of what's an acceptable data size or an acceptable file size with Excel. So one thing to be careful of is you may want to do this function and then paste the values in. So instead of having the COUNTIFS still in there when you do your work and try and get rid of your total rows, you may just want to paste those values right back in. So now with the row number, I'm actually trying to find the total row. I want to find the last row, which I've actually used for other things too, like let's say ESPP enrollment. I want to find the most recent enrollment. I want the last enrollment contribution percentage that they did. I don't care about all the other changes they made during the open enrollment period. I only care about this particular one. So this is another little function I use. I always start with 1, and the first thing I've done is I've sorted my data. When I'm dealing with tranche data, I've sorted my data by number and vest date, and sometimes even shares, to make sure that my total row is always at the bottom. So now this very fancy formula, all I do is say if the number is the same as the row above it, so if number A3 equals A2, if number equals number above it, and I need an if in front of that, if that is true, then I'm going to take the row number from above and I'm going to increment it by 1, E2 plus 1. Otherwise, if it's a new grant, reset to 1. Very complicated formula. That was sarcasm. So then I can, again, paste that down through many, many, many rows of data. And even with monthly vesting, I'll come out with the right row number. Which row number I'm on? I'm on 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, etc. So now this has told me that this is the last row. Again, I can use that for various reasons. In this example, I'm using it to figure out which is the total row so I can get rid of it. And again, if you're doing something like this and you're finding total row, you are definitely going to want to paste values after you put these functions in, because this is going to keep updating. If you delete rows, this is going to keep updating, and it's going to be circular logic, and your spreadsheet could get hung and get stuck. So you're definitely going to want to take this information and paste all this just in as values. And look, you can see that it did find that my total row for this grant was this one, which it is. They're the 300 shares and the final vest date, and the 600 shares and the final vest date for that one. And now, once I pasted my values in, let's do the paste values, Control C, and then I'm going to Control Alt E S, and then values. That's paste special, Alt E S, values. I don't want those formulas in there anymore because I don't want it to keep recalculating. So now you can see I've just got a 4 and a 1 and a false. I don't have the formulas anymore. Now when I go to delete my header rows, I can just delete these, and these things won't recalculate and get me stuck in a circular loop. And now I have just my underlying data to work with, no total rows, and I can do the calculations that I needed to do. So that is my current favorite use of COUNTIFs. I hope that was helpful and that you all have a wonderful day. Thank you.